Hey everyone, welcome to Optonex Tech. Are you frustrated with messy date formats or clunky input fields? Imagine a world where choosing a date is simple, intuitive, and smooth. Introducing the dynamic and customizable date input component in React, designed for effortless date selection with a seamless interface that converts dates for you in real time. Let's dive in and start the development. We have already created React project. In that, create new folder named date input inside components folder, which contains two files, index.jsx for component user interface and date input.css for custom styling of input. Moving to JSX file, we start by importing useState and useEffect hooks from React. We also import date input CSS file. Next, we define our date input functional component. This component accepts several props, a label for the input, minimum and maximum dates, a callback function for when the date changes, and the current value. We initialize a local state variable called date using the useState hook. This will hold the selected date in a format that we can work with. We also define a helper function, convert to display date, which takes an input date, split that date using dash character which gets day, month and year, and then return reformat date into a year month day format for our date input. In the next part, we utilize the useEffect hook to listen for changes in the value prop. If value is provided, we set date return by convert to display date function. Now, let's handle the date change event. When the user selects a date, the handle date change function gets triggered. It formats the date and updates the local state. If an onDate change function is provided, it is called with the formatted date. Then, we return the JSX for our component which contains div element with class name date input container. Next, we have a conditional rendering for the label. If a label is provided, we render a label element with the class date label. If it's not provided, the label won't be rendered. Now, we have the actual date input element with the type date. The class date input helps us style it using CSS. The value prop of the input is tied to the component's internal date state. Next, the onChange handler is triggered whenever the user selects a new date. This is done by calling the handle date change function. The min and max attributes set the boundaries for the date selection. Finally, we export the date input component to use in other parts of application. Let's begin by styling the container for our date input. We use a flexbox layout to arrange the label and input vertically, with a margin at the bottom for spacing. We also set a maximum width for the container. Next, we style the label for the date input. We set the font size, make it bold, and add some margin at the bottom to separate it from the input. The color is set to a dark shade for good visibility. Now, let's focus on styling the actual input field. We add padding for better spacing inside the input, set a larger font size for readability, and define a light border with rounded corners. The outline is set to none for a cleaner look, and we add a transition effect for the border color. To enhance user experience, we define a focus state for the input. When the input is focused, we change the border color to a blue shade to indicate that the field is active. Lastly, we customize the appearance of the calendar picker indicator for the input field. This makes the cursor change to a pointer when hovering over the calendar icon. We import the useState hook from React and our custom date input component from the components folder. We initialize a state variable called selectedDate using the useState hook. This variable will hold the date that the user selects from the date input component. Now, in JSX, below header, we include the date input component, passing it the label, the current value of selected date, and the handle date change function as props. Finally, we display the currently selected date. If no date has been selected yet, we show a message indicating that. Now our development is completed. Let's test the demo. Here we have the date input component. At the top, we have a label that indicates what the user should do. In this case, it says, select date. Next, we have the actual date input field. This is where users can click and select a date. The input is styled with padding and border effects, which give it a polished look. The date picker allows the user to select a date from a calendar view, making it easier to choose dates without typing them in manually. Now, when a user selects a date, the handle date change function is triggered. This function takes the date from the input and converts it back to DDMMYYYY format for display. Our date input component provides a simple and effective way for users to select dates while ensuring proper formatting throughout. It's designed to be intuitive, with a clean interface that makes date selection easy. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Stay tuned for upcoming videos.